Good morning and welcome to Smile & Co. Coffee Chat. This morning we have Colinda Higgins here. Colinda started as a dental assistant, worked her way into a dental administrator, a hygiene coordinator, treatment coordinator, up to office manager, then dental consultant, and now a business coach. All of this experience has given Colinda an overview of what it means to be in each of these roles. Welcome, Colinda. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, thanks for having me. I've been in the field for about 25 years now. I've got a wide expertise on everything that involves pretty much the administrative business side of the dentistry.
Excellent. So we have a few questions for Colinda. She's going to give us a little bit of insight into the office management side of things. We have a few questions for her just to give all of our viewers a little bit more information on how to better run your practice. Thanks for joining us, Colinda, and we'll just jump straight into these questions.
Absolutely.
Get going on this. So, as far as performance monitoring, how would you say the best way to assess and monitor the performance of your clinic and your staff would be? What would the key metrics that you would track be?
Before I measure my staff success, I truly believe you need to know what your team, what the office goals are. So there are 4 goals and that I highly recommend that gets monitored. People call them KPIs, the key performance indicators, but that is really where I would start with. Understand what those goals, what those 4 are. And then from there, you can teach and mentor your team from that part of it. But everybody needs to know what the vision is and what success is to your team. So the first one usually is always asked to me, which one should be the first one that we should really look at. And I always say, look at your pre-booking success. Start with your hygiene pre-booking success. That is the top one. And the reason why for me it's the top one is if you can get 80% of your patients to book back today, that is less labor time for your business team in 3 months, 6 months. It takes about 7 points of contact before a patient will book. So if you as a team, whether it's your hygiene team, the business team can pre-book them, you are going to save a lot of labor time on that one. So that's pretty much my first one that's always asked from that. After that, it really kind of depends on how your office numbers look. Another one I look at is your accounts receivable. No point working that hard if you're not collecting the money. So really dial into your AR, take a look at how much you're collecting from that. The goal is always 98% of this month's collections from last month's production. So that's kind of the little mini formula. And again, all of these, you need to have a system in place that your team needs to understand of how to get these numbers. It's not just, you get these numbers and you get these metrics by having a system in place and coaching your team.
It's so important for your team to have a full understanding of that aspect of it as well, not just the patients, but the full picture.
They do, and it's one of those things where you just can't go out and tell your team this is what I want and not give them the tools of how to get there and what the expectation is. So systems drive offices. Any business, you need the systems in place and the coaching in place, and that's where you're really going to see the numbers drive from that part of it. It's a lot. I compare it to like a Fitbit in the way of, if everybody knows, you know, back to the Fitbit is like you need to do 10,000 steps to be healthy. How about your KPIs? What are those benchmarks? What does each department need to be healthy? And that's how I kind of always give that analogy for people to understand it, because sometimes when we're busy talking in these languages of KPIs and all this analytical talk, it's kind of a scary world. And so if we can bring it down to a world and language that makes a little bit more sense, people are more apt to buy into it from that part of it. And I find the Fitbit always works.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah, you betcha. The other one I actually look at too is your patient acquisition versus patient attrition. So that's another one I always take a look at from that part of it. How many new patients do you guys have coming in versus how many are going up the door? That's another kind of nice one to look at. And then of course, always every dentist, every owner wants to know your case acceptance. And case acceptance, you know, it's a team effort. It's not just done by your treatment coordinator. It is everybody who has contact with a patient has an impact on the case acceptance.
It's a team environment. It's up to everyone. It takes a village to run the practice, and it's not just up to one person, it's up to everyone.
That's exactly it. I absolutely agree.
Going back to the patient attrition, what would you say the biggest cause of patient attrition is?
You know, it actually is dependent on your practice. But if you don't measure it, so there's lots of things you can do to measure your patient attrition. I highly recommend putting in internal codes. Create an internal code in your software program. That way you can pull the reasons why. You know, some offices, if you have a little boutique office and you're losing patients because of your hours, because you don't have evenings or weekends. Maybe you're in a smaller area and you're not, there's another dentist who has more procedures they do. Take a look. Everyone always goes to thinking it's financial. It's not always financial.
Don't
I
make
think that's
decisions.
it. You know, we always tend to say that's the reason it is, but it's not. So once you start seeing the reason why your patients are leaving and you'll start seeing the trend, then you can start making adjustments. But I see a lot of people and doctors and offices focusing so much on getting new patients in the door, which is important.
Mhm.
But they haven't monitored why people are leaving. And if you don't fix and put a plug in the back end, you're just going to lose it anyways. You're putting money, all your money is not going to the right resources. So find out why patients are leaving and adjust accordingly.
And nurture and foster those relationships with the patients that you have should be your number one priority.
I read a stat here, and it's kind of been the industry stat that, and I could have this completely wrong, but I think it's 80% of patients are indifferent to their dentist.
That's
Which is, I think it was 60, like it was, I couldn't, again, don't quote me exactly on it, 60%, 80%, but it was such a high number that people that are so indifferent to their dentists that you got to know why.
yeah, yeah. And to just ask those questions and have an understanding of where they're going and why they're leaving. And there's a lot, I mean, if you're in a bigger city, they have the opportunity to just go to the practice next door. So do what you can to keep those valued patients for sure.
Yeah, and it's all about that patient care. It's the whole team approach. Everybody who has contact with that patient has an opportunity to keep them, get them to refer more people, their friends and their family, or for them to leave you.
It's keeping your patients and keeping your staff are very similar approaches to one another.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Now, all of these KPIs, there are software programs that can get that information for you. You can either do it manually, or there's third-party softwares that actually will give you all the data that you need.
If you were to compare doing it manually to these third-party softwares, how much time would you say you save by using one of the softwares versus doing it manually?
Oh, minimum 5 hours a month, at least, if not more. So sometimes you have to look at it if there's not enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
These third-party softwares, they really can grab your data for you. They really can pull that information.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes what I've noticed is some of the offices I go into, they actually have this data, but they don't know what to do with it. So they've got all this information, but they don't know where to go with the information.
So with that being said, what role would you say those practice management software, what role would they play in the day-to-day operations of a dental clinic? And really, how do you choose what the right software is?
So now for these third-party softwares that pull the analytics, it will pull from your software program. So if your software program is not set up to grab that analytics, it's going to give you the wrong information. So getting back to your question, choosing the right software, having the right software program is critical. Your software is the brains of the operation from that part of it. And then the third party that will do the analytics will just pull that information, extract that information from it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So be sure to do your research and know which softwares would best suit your practice.
And there's a lot of different softwares that are out there. Like every software, there's some really good software programs that are out there. And every software has their own strengths. There's some that are extremely user-friendly, some that are a little bit less user-friendly. One day we will create a master software system that all dental offices can use. Everybody knows it. There'll be one nice system. And then training employees on software programs, you've just reduced your training costs and onboarding costs by half, because that seems to be usually one of the hardest things, is to train team members on the software programs.
Do you find that most practices are training them hands-on on the software programs, or do they have some sort of library that they can go to beforehand just to prepare themselves for the software? Do you find that it's the only way is to do it right in the office when you have patients coming to the desk?
I've seen some software programs actually have like a tutorial.
Mm-hmm.
That some offices will say, hey, you go learn this on your own from that part. Some people come in already learning some of the software programs. But because we customize that all very differently, and typically what happens is most people will learn on the job.
Mm-hmm.
And they are taught by somebody else who's been taught by somebody else who's been taught by somebody else. You know, that whole telephone game that goes all the way down. And people aren't using their software program to their fullest. So typically to me, it doesn't really matter what software program you use within reason. But the biggest thing is making sure that you are actually using it to its potential. I see this, just take outside of dental. We go buy a washing machine or a dishwasher, and you buy all the fancy little buttons that go with it. Nobody uses it. And you see that so much in dental software programs. People just aren't using it to its capability, and they'll make work projects that go all these long labor intensive systems when they didn't realize that the program actually can do it for them. So lots of systems need to be, so again, regardless of which software program you use, know what it can do.
Yeah. Understand
your software and ask why. And if it's, it's a computer, usually there's a way around it. And one of the biggest things I find is people in the software field, they're computer engineers. They don't get the real day-to-day. Mm-hmm. But if you go and ask them for enhancements, they make them. And I've had several programs give me the enhancements that I've requested, which is fantastic.
User feedback is the best way to improve your service. I mean, we at Smile & Co, we do the same thing. We have our system, but we're always open to feedback. So if there's something that somebody wishes that we had in our system, we're always open to that conversation, because user feedback is the best way to improve your own system. And I think most software companies are open to that feedback, as long as it's a market demand.
I agree with you. And that kind of goes back to, as we were talking about patient attrition, same thing with patient surveys. Listen to the feedback of, not everybody wants negative feedback, but that's where your improvements come. That's where you keep your growth going.
Yeah.
Being able to reflect back, whether it's your software program, whether it's your patients, even if it's a team member who's left, you have to listen to the feedback in order to keep growing.
Sometimes it doesn't feel good to hear that feedback, but it's important so that you don't repeat the same mistakes.
And it's just about, digesting it, validating what part of truth there is in it. But if you see the same pattern, now it's time to make it, either keep doing it, that's okay. You can keep changing, keep going down that path, or you can change.
Yeah.
From that part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's not an easy route to go, but there's the only way for improvement is if you know what you need to improve on.
And that goes with everything, right? So whether it kind of goes back to our KPIs, what you measure will improve. It's just, yeah. So same thing with your software program. As we kind of go back to the software program, everybody jumps in full feet first, right? As soon as the office manager or somebody makes a change, they want everything changed at once. Go slow. Pick one goal, understand it, move forward once you've got to that point. So same thing with your dental software. Pick one area where you really want to learn on it, teach the team, then go to the next area.
It's a lot less overwhelming that way if you do it in sections versus just all at once.
That's exactly it. That's exactly what I find.
Is there any other areas where you find that people aren't using their software to the full potential?
I actually kind of see it in lots of the different departments. So in a dental practice, for example, the biggest one I will see is the treatment planning section of it. You will see clinicians not treatment planning the next appointment. I call it sequencing and treatment planning. How are they communicating with the admin team or the business team? What's the next appointment? And how long should you be scheduling it for? Time is money. And so usually it's blank. And there are areas in all the software programs to do that. You just got to find out where it is. So that's one of the big ones I see. I also see it in accounts receivable reporting, like in the financial part of it. I do see quite a bit where everyone's always printing off the 0 to 90-day report, and it's one report, and everybody starts at A and ends at Z from that part of it. So the report inefficiencies of it, the pre-auth reports. There are some of the software programs, not all of them. They actually have a report that'll show you all the predeterminations that you have not received in your office. And so many offices are so insurance driven, and we're in the real world too, right? If you were to say to a patient, hey, we're not going to track your pre, we'll send it off, but you are to send it to us when you receive it. People are busy. That's never going to happen. So to be able to have that report to follow up to, and for those dental plans that go to the patient only, we know which ones those are, and you can reach out to them in 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how you sent it. If you sent it electronically or manually, at least you can follow up with it from that aspect. Keep that communication open with your patients. Yeah,
but that's not avoiding you till their next recall.
Exactly. But the biggest things I typically see is, softwares are not getting used to its full potential. There's so many workarounds. And if something doesn't seem right, so let's talk, like we're talking about the reports and the financial reports, and the numbers don't seem right, and they're not right, and you decide to create an Excel spreadsheet, or you're going to manually calculate that, I would question that. I would stop that and say, and call back to support, ask support. This doesn't make sense. The numbers aren't adding up. Look at it and see what you're doing from that point. And right down to, I'll even say the continuing care tags. I see lots of times continuing care tags are not set up properly because people aren't understanding the behind the scenes and the gears that drive the systems behind it.
Mhm.
So if your continuing care is not set up properly, your patients aren't getting notified properly. And if you were to have a third-party software that sends off those text messages and those emails, it's still based on the brains of the operation, which is your software program. They're pulling in from that.
So that third-party software can't function to its full potential if the main software isn't functioning to its full potential.
Yeah, so make sure that your systems are set up. And even if you're the second manager coming in, and I've seen this a few times where, another manager's taken over, but we just trust that the system's set up properly. And sometimes you'll find that things don't quite add up. If they don't add up and it doesn't make sense, question why, call support. If you don't like support's answer, call again. Okay, and keep going till it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And go ahead.
Almost do a software audit so that you know that it's up to your own standards, not the last person's standards.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly it.
Excellent advice. I think that's one thing that people, because it's software and it can be overwhelming for people, I think that instead of asking those questions, people tend to just fall into their routines and continue on with what they know instead of working to make it better. So that's excellent advice.
Exactly. And the nice thing too is lots of these software programs, they have, as we're talking kind of like about the educational part of it, like of the learning of it and the developing of it, they actually have newsletters and how to learn stuff. So quite a few of them have like weekly little mini newsletters that go out about, did you know the program does this, or YouTube videos, which is extremely helpful.
Yeah, I know a lot of them have like a tutorial section for their clients, so that if you have questions, you can just revert to their tutorial section. And if you still have questions, then you can reach out, but at least you have those tutorials available if you just have a quick question that you don't want to call in for. I know Recall Max has, just as an example, they have tutorials that you can go kind of learn anything about their software right through their website, so that if you have those questions, your questions can be answered without actually having to call and talk to anybody if you don't have the time.
It's a fantastic program. Their training modules are so well done. Like so well done on Recall Maps. From that. Yeah. And the nice thing about that too is when you have a new employee and they've never been on Recall Maps, your team does not need to be removed from their duties to teach them. They can go in and dial in and view these videos on their own and get up to speed with the rest of the team. Which they're ready to do so.
Which makes the onboarding process so much easier.
It sure does, because that's one of the hardest things is when you're onboarding team members, teaching them, there's a lot of cost associated with onboarding somebody.
Absolutely. The more that they can be prepared in advance, the better it is. And the better it is for your patients too, so that they're not, I mean, your patients pick up on it if somebody isn't knowledgeable in a certain area, or if they're fumbling or whatever it may be. So it's so helpful to have those tutorial sessions done before they come into the office, at least so that they have a base knowledge. And then of course, if they have questions, they're welcome to ask those, but it doesn't take up all this extra time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Okay, my last question, and then I can let you go for the day. In your experience, why is it important to why is it important to follow a hiring process? And what would you say are the most detrimental steps of the hiring process?
For me, the biggest thing about the hiring process is being intentional of what you need. So sometimes we just hire to hire because we're short. So we're just gonna hire a body, right? We're just gonna put that ad out there. We're just gonna get the first one that comes in. And I say, let's slow down. Let's take a look at what are you hiring for? What is the strategic plan? And it goes right down to what kind of role would this person fill? What are their duties going to be? What kind of hours do you need for this person? Because if you're going to guarantee 40 hours a week, when you're bringing somebody on and that's what they need to live and to budget with, you can't meet that. You have a responsibility as an employer as well. What kind of experience are you meeting? So there's so many things that you have to look at. Here's one of the big ones I see is the amount of people that you currently have on your team. How many are experienced versus how many are your seniors versus your juniors? So you have to be very intentional with what you're looking for. So if you have a business team that has 3 senior employees already on there, maybe you can get a junior employee because you've already got that depth on your team. However, if you're, an office with two business team members and you hire another junior. So you have to really kind of look at that part of it, even going down to an assistant. Hygienist, what are you needing in your team from that part of it? What kind of depth do you need? And that kind of sets the budget as well.
Yeah.
So know your budget, know how much you can offer, what the hours are, what the duties are going to be. Because if you're going to take the time to interview somebody and they're going to take the time to come in, we should know what the dollar value is of what you can offer them. One thing that I always kind of add on to there too is, and this is kind of next higher level engagement in the hiring process, look at the personality. What kind of personality are you needing to fill? That's kind of a crazy question. Have you ever heard that question before?
That's a question that we ask, and the responses that we get, most people don't actually know what personality they're looking for within an office. But what we do find a lot of is that they don't focus on the personality. They only focus on technical skills. They don't focus on their soft skills at all. And then a month into their hire, they realize that that person is not meshing well with the rest of the office. So it's so important, so important to be able to hire somebody who fits in with your team. And while technical skills are always important, I would almost say that those soft skills are more important than someone's technical skills, because most often technical skills can be trained. So if they have the background in dentistry or even the education in dentistry, those technical skills will come. The soft skills are one of the most important things to focus on from my experience.
So I absolutely 100% agree with you on that one. You can teach, like you said, you can teach any skill. I can't teach personality.
Exactly.
But what you've got to look at for the next level is, well, what kind of personality am I looking that our team needs to round out?
Yeah.
So here's a analogy I always give. If you have a dentist and you're looking for an assistant for this dentist, and your dentist is an introvert and he's very, very quiet, then the personality you need for this assistant to round off that team would be an extremely bubbly extrovert.
Yeah.
So same thing when it comes to any position in the team. I'll say business team, you've got somebody who's very driven with their customer skills and they can chit chat up with a patient and make them feel very comfortable. Who's doing the tasks? You need somebody who's doing the daily, the paperwork shuffle, the daily work push of it. So take a look to see if you've got somebody who's very driven, heads down, they're focused on the task at hand, but they don't lift their head when a patient walks through the door. So just know what you're looking for, what you already have, and what's going to complement your team from that part of it.
Amazing advice. So it's so important. Those personalities can make or break an office. So And they can bring in more patients, or they can kind of push patients away. So it's so important to focus on personalities as well as technical skills. But again, I put a lot of focus on personalities.
So do I. And it's to finding that spot where you've got the experience plus the personality, what you need. It's huge.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And I love all of the advice that you've given here. Is there anything that you want to add before we cut it out for the day?
No, just I guess one of the biggest things is no matter what you do, whenever you bring on a new team member, a new software, you're going to measure KPIs. Go slow and steady. Don't overwhelm your team. Start with one. Get it to the level you want it to be, typically 80%, before you introduce something new. Don't overwhelm your team with all the demands. That typically will break them. The stress will go up, the patient care will go down, and it ultimately affects your bottom dollar.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Colinda.
Thanks for having me.
One question before I let you go. If anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you if they have any questions?
Best way to get hold of me is probably through LinkedIn under Colinda Higgins, and you will find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we'll chat with you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.